Smart motion, motion scripting, movesets, locomotion, it has several names but describe the same result. Use minimal input to create complex movement. We set up rules to blend animations together so that it happens automatically. These next videos will focus on the actual math and variables used to create smart movement. When I talk about rules, I'm really just talking about ranges. Stuff must happen when the character does this, and then it changes to that if the character is doing that. Our rules are pretty simple. When the character is translating left, blend to the left animation. When it translates forward, blend left to the forward animation. The easiest way to understand this is to create a visual way to view our blending animations. Enter the controller, a 3D object we can feed values into to drive our track blending. We have 4 tracks that need blending, and that means 4 quadrants. I made a 3D object in the Object folder to represent our visual quadrant. Go to File and Load. Inside the HiVant folder, Objects folder, there's an OBJ called Quadrant. Now it's just a simple diamond shape that represents 1/4 of a square. Arrange this quadrant like this. Go into Setup, go to the Tools, and we're going to add a Value tool. And the reason why I use a Value tool is because it doesn't have anything that can display in the 3D view that can be pickable or even drawable. Value is just a place to hold translation and rotation data. And that's what we want to do. This value is going to hold a default rotation and translation so that our quadrant sits at 0 value. Parent the quadrant to value, and we're going to rename this value tool to something like Q forward. And it's a group, so put GRP on the end, and then rename this quadrant Q forward. Let's duplicate this. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees on heading. This is going to be the right quadrant. So change this to Q right underscore GRP and Q right underneath that. Duplicate that. We'll rotate this group 180 degrees. That's going to be the rear quadrant, or backwards, or Q back underscore GRP, and then Q back as the actual object. Duplicate it for the last time. We'll rotate this one -90, which is the left quadrant. So Q left underscore GRP, Q left. Let's add another value tool in here. We'll unparent that, and we will just call this value controller. Parent forward, right, back in the left group to the controller so that we have a hierarchy that can be represented in here. So we have 4 quadrants that now we can see visually what goes on. Now that we've rearranged the groups, each of these groups are aiming in different directions so that if we decide we're going to move along Z, Z always aims out along the group. This will allow us to visualize how these blend. For example, we're going to move this quadrant out 1 unit, and that 1 unit is going to correspond to how the track blends from 0 to 1. I know all of these are moved out. They need to be put back to their 0 position. Here's what it's going to look like so that we can visualize it. When this is sitting at 1 unit, it's going to be animating the walk forward track. As we use our code and programming, this track is going to fade back to 0, and as it fades back to 0, this will fade up to 1, and then will blend into the walk right track. As this walk right track blends back down, our programming will move the rear track out, and then we'll be looking at the walk backwards animation. Walk backwards track fades out. It will fade over to the walk left track, and as the walk left track fades out, we'll fade forward. So it's a very visual way of us understanding how our rules are taking place, blending these animations together. It's strictly a visual thing. So let's set all of these back to 0. I'm just going to change all of those Z values to 0 so that we are now at a default position, and we have the controller. Right click, and we're going to save this scene as, inside the scenes folder, controller.fxs.